To be completely honest, I've never been the biggest Franky fan. I mean, he definitely plays an important role in the Straw Hats crew, seeing as he's the crew's shipwright. But it wasn't until I went back to reread Water 7 when I realized how much of a good character Franky really is. There's so much about him that people just don't understand. As a One Piece fan myself, I see this all the time. See, the assumption is that Franky doesn't grow as a character as the story continues to progress. What most One Piece fans just don't understand is that Franky doesn't need to develop. By the time the Straw Hats meet Franky, he already laid down the bricks to fix his traumatizing past. And the final piece of the puzzle was Luffy, who gave him that final push. Well, I guess just most people just don't understand Franky, man, but that's what we're here to fix. Because honestly, what's not to like about this character? He has an amazing character design, he is a literal genius at building stuff, he has an eccentric personality, charm, charisma, and he's a damn robot. I mean, who doesn't like robots? I love robots, you love robots, we love robots. Well, technically, Franky is not a robot, he's a cyborg, but you get the point. He's literally the manliest man yet the biggest crybaby you'll ever meet. He's very emotional in certain situations, and it's partially because of how much he cares for other people, which includes his family of outcasts, the Franky family. There's his sisters Mozu and Kiwi, and there's these guys. I love Franky's relationship with his family, mostly because Franky was an outcast himself. From a young age, Franky was abandoned by his parents who were pirates. Tom, the big fish guy, took him in as his own. In the world of One Piece, it's very well known how fishmen are not seen as equal to humans, so essentially Franky did the same thing that Tom did for him. It also goes to show how Franky accepts his past and moves on from his fear of being abandoned, basically. Yeah, isn't this the same thing that Luffy does? Everyone in the Straw Hats crew is either abandoned or unwanted. Yeah, that's crazy. Franky is also a big ball of energy. I guess that's why he relates so well with Luffy. Obviously, as they go on these grand adventures together to find the One Piece, the Straw Hats get to have some fun along the way. But this video is not about the Straw Hats. It's about finding the motivations behind Franky's creations and finding a deeper meaning behind why he turned himself into a fucking Gundam. To understand all of this, we have to rewind the clock and go back to his past. So Franky, otherwise known as Cutty Flam, was abandoned by his parents from a young age. He somehow found himself in the scrapyards of Water 7. Tom, a talented shipwright and fishman, took him in and gave him a home. They lived together with Kokoro, Iceberg, and a giant toad named Yokozuna. During this time, Tom taught Iceberg and Franky how to build ships. Franky especially learned much quicker and was an overall better shipwright than Iceberg. He was a prodigy when it came to building stuff. Franky was obsessed with creating battleships. He called them Battle Frankies. Dangerously amazing ships that could launch cannons and a barrage of attacks, which he tested on sea creatures. Franky merely thought of these as his precious creations that he could build and just have fun with. On the flip side, after building these contraptions, he often left them unattended and in the open. As you can imagine, Iceberg was very skeptical of Franky's creations, not because of Franky himself, but the harm that his battle Frankies could cause if placed in the wrong hands. As the story continues to progress, we find out that Tom is brought on trial before the world government for having built the deceased king's pirate ship, the Oro Jackson. Right before Tom gets his final judgment, he makes a proposal to the judge that he simply could not refuse. He offered to build a sea train that could connect Water 7 to other islands, including Annie's Lobby, thus making Water 7 prosper again. Tom's request was granted and he was released on account of a promise to build the sea train. During this time, he worked on building the sea train together with Iceberg and Franky. He also revealed to Iceberg and Franky of his possession of blueprints to an ancient weapon of mass destruction, Pluton. Franky, being Franky, was more concerned about using the blueprints to try and build it because it looked fun. 10 years passed and Tom finally finished building the sea train. Now comes the introduction of a much less interesting character, Spandam. I hate Spandam with a passion. He's one of the most annoying characters in the show, but that's a story for another day. So essentially, Spandam had intel that Tom was in possession of blueprints to Pluton, one of the 3 ancient weapons. It never made sense for Tom to just hand over the blueprints, so he denied having anything to do with it. And what did Spandam do next? He used Franky's battleships to attack the town and frame Tom for all of it. In a shocking turn of events, it's here where Franky comes to find out that the very ships he built were used to harm the people he cared about the most. By the end of it all, Iceberg basically disowned Franky, having warned him multiple times about his ships, and Tom is severely injured. Imagine having to deal with such a heavy guilt, blaming yourself for something bad that happened to someone you love and care about, especially when it's your fault. Franky is in this awkward situation where he just doesn't understand the weight of the responsibility that comes with building powerful ships. A wise man once said, "With great power comes great responsibility." The same creations that he built up tore him down. This is what Iceberg was trying to tell him all along, but it was too late. With this, Franky began to resent himself and denied his creations. From the first introduction of Tom, it was always established that he always had a sense of pride in every single ship that he ever built. The most valuable lesson that Franky had to learn from Tom was that whether his creations were good or bad, he had to love them because no matter what, he created them. Without this realization, Franky would have never wanted to create anything ever again. Eventually, Tom takes all the blame and gets taken into the sea train to be executed back in Annie's lobby. The next time we see Franky is when he tries to stop the sea train to save Tom. He fails miserably, gets crushed by the train, and is presumed dead. His already broken body washes up on the base of a broken and abandoned ship. He's still alive, but he's barely moving. He picks up pieces of scrap to rebuild his already broken body, modifying himself into a new cybernetically enhanced human. And this is where Franky's story gets interesting. Franky rebuilds his body from the inside out, modifying himself into becoming a cyborg, his biggest and best creation he's ever built being himself. In doing this, he took what Tom said to heart. He's proud of his creations, and that means he takes pride in himself. Making himself into this new version gave him purpose to be responsible for whatever action he takes. In this sense, he took inspiration and lessons from both Iceberg and Tom. He continued to add modifications to himself and made sure that only he could use his weapons. And although he grew more into himself, he never made other ships other than modifying his body. It's only until he met Luffy when he found someone who could use his creations for a good cause. He found someone he could trust in, and that was Luffy. Luffy gave him that extra push that he needed to go after his dream, to build a ship that could sail the entire world. Franky is truly amazing, and I hope that I helped someone to at least appreciate the character he has developed to become. We all love Franky, and he deserves so much more love. He doesn't need to develop. He's already the best version of himself, and his constant modifications across arcs speak for themselves.